So you got braids for Christmas, but now Dirty December is over, but its spirit is still living on in your scalp. Well, in today's video, I'm going to be sharing with you guys how I like to clean my scalp whilst I have braids in and without having to get into the shower. I will also be sharing tips on how you can recognize when you personally need to cleanse your scalp, as well as the best product recommendations that you can use to help you tailor this method to you personally. So make sure you stick around because you don't want to miss this. All right, people, get comfy and let's get into it. So here's what you're going to need for this method. The first thing you're going to need is an applicator bottle, ideally 2. The next thing you're going to need is some warm filtered water. Now this is especially important if you live in a hard water area, and that's primarily because mineral buildup can cause or aggravate scalp conditions, and we don't want that. Also because your scalp oils, otherwise known as sebum, tends to get quite waxy when it dries up, and especially as it mixes with dirt over time and it's not cleaned off, and so using warm water will just help it to melt so that it's removed easier. Now I have a water filter that softens the water throughout the entire house, and so I'm just going to go ahead and put some warm water in from the tap. The next thing you're going to need is either a pack of cotton pads or cotton balls. You're going to want to have a towel to catch the drip and or one to use to pat your head dry after we're done. And if you don't have a microfiber towel, you can always just use a good old cotton t-shirt. And then lastly, you're going to need your shampoo of choice. Now it's very important to note here that the type of shampoo that you use should be appropriate for you and your personal scalp needs. And here's exactly what I mean by that. If your scalp is naturally very oily or greasy, so for example, if you're somebody that struggles with seborrheic dermatitis or dandruff, then you want to go for a shampoo that's specially formulated for this. Good examples in this category would be the Tony Milidi Juniper Scalp Therapy Shampoo, a Head and Shoulders shampoo, or good old Nice Oral. Alternatively, if your scalp is on the drier side, so it tends to get tight, then you probably want to opt for a conditioning wash that is not going to entirely strip your scalp of its natural oils. The Curl Smith Conditioning Wash as well as the Bouclem Curl Cleanser are both good examples that can be used here. And finally, if your scalp isn't on either extreme, then you can simply just go ahead and use your favorite staple weekly cleanser. So whichever one that you feel like gives you a good clean without leaving your hair feeling too stripped. Now my current personal favorites in this category would include the Olaplex No. 4 and the Main Choice Easy on the Curls, which as you can see, I will be using today. The first step in this method will be to create a diluted cleansing mix using a rough ratio of about 1 to 5 of cleanser to water. Now this ratio may vary depending on how concentrated your cleanser of choice already is. So for example, if it's on the more viscous side, then you may want to add more water, and vice versa if it's already quite a watery formula. The key here is to create a watered down consistency that still has a notable sudsy film. Now, I also have to say this because I know that we love a good DIY concoction, but you really should only be making about as much as you plan to use right now, as in this moment, as in immediately. Whatever you do, please do not store this to use this later, not for this and not for any other DIY concoction that you have lying around your house. So yes, that also goes for the 2-week-old mixture of oil and water that you have sitting in your bathroom. Yeah, because you and I both know that it's been longer than 2 weeks, hasn't it? Look, we can save the microbial disasters video for another day, but just trust me when I say that's not the kind of energy that we want to be bringing anywhere. Now, the next thing you want to do is to put your hair into sections. I'm going to go with 4 because my braids aren't that full, but you can do more or less depending on how dense or large your braids are. This is just to make it easier to maneuver around your head and ensure that you're not missing any spots. Once that's done, then you can go ahead and saturate your cotton pad or ball with the mixture so it's wet, but not soaking or dripping. Now working section by section, you can lift up the braids and begin to rub the pad against your scalp in between the individual braids. If it makes it easier for you, you can part the braids line by line, just again to make sure that you're not missing any spots. Now, as you move through the section, it's not unlikely that the pad will kind of lose a bit of its foam, and that's just because it's mixing with the oils on your scalp. So if need be, you can obviously feel free to go in with another pad just to make sure that you are cleansing that scalp properly. In any event, you'll want to go through each section about twice or thrice, or until your pads start to come back looking noticeably cleaner. Now, in order to rinse the shampoo out of your scalp, there's 2 ways that you could typically do this. For the first way, you can lift up your braids and tilt your head to the side and use the other applicator bottle to squirt out some clean water onto your scalp. This option can be quite messy and tricky, especially as it can trickle down everywhere and you don't want that. Look, it's not cute. So just make sure that you keep your towel handy just to be able to soak up all the drips. Alternatively, you can simply repeat the same steps that you did for cleansing with the pad, except instead of using a shampoo mixture, this time you'll just saturate the pad with plain filtered water. Again, you'll want to do this a couple times just to ensure that you've gotten all the shampoo out. Now, if I had to pick between these two methods, I would definitely go for the former, just because it is best practice to make sure that you are fully rinsing out shampoo or cleansing products from your scalp. And doing it this way just gives me more confidence knowing that it's actually being rinsed out of my scalp. You feel me? Finally, you can take that towel or t-shirt and start to pat your scalp dry, making sure that you're soaking up all the excess moisture from your hair and scalp, et voila. Now, you guys already know how I feel about oiling scalps, so it really shouldn't come as a surprise when I say that at this point, I would typically just leave my hair to dry itself and I wouldn't apply anything to my scalp, just so that my scalp can kind of re-regulate itself as it starts to reproduce more sebum. But I can already feel the burning eyes through the screen, so I will say this. If you are particularly concerned about leaving your scalp bare, especially if your scalp falls on the drier side and struggles to hold on to moisture or is slow to produce sebum, then you can 100% go ahead and apply a scalp serum to your scalp. Unfortunately, we don't have the time to get into what you should be using on your scalp in this video, so if you would be interested in a video that covers that, then please do let me know in the comments and I'll get to making that video for you guys ASAP. But all I will say for now is that whatever product you do decide to use on your scalp after you've washed it or cleansed it, please just make sure that it was specifically designed to be used and left on the scalp. Hey, if you're enjoying this video so far, then please go ahead and hit that like button for me. Also, if you're new here, welcome to the party. And if you haven't already, you probably want to go ahead and hit that subscribe button too, because we've got some pretty exciting videos coming up and you definitely don't want to miss those. Now, seeing as you're basically already in my comments, I want to know, what are your general thoughts on washing your hair and or your scalp whilst you have braids in? Is that something that you do? Do you have a preferred method? Have you tried this particular one before? Go ahead and let me know in the comments, and in the meantime, I'm going to tell you guys why this is my personal ideal method. Okay. Now, I am aware that historically, when someone refers to washing your braids, it typically looks very similar to a standard washing session, i.e. getting in the shower, drenching your entire head in water, shampooing, yada, 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 you know, the whole shebang. And whilst it really isn't the end of the world if this is the method that you adopt, it's just personally not my preferred method for a couple of reasons. And here's the first one. Now, in order of priority, the reason why it's advised to shampoo and or cleanse your hair and scalp at regular intervals is A, to remove excess sebum from your scalp in order to prevent the onset of a myriad of scalp conditions, and then B, to remove dirt and residual product from the hair shaft itself before reapplication in order to maintain the condition of the hair, prevent product buildup, and keep the hair both pleasant to manage and to look at. Now, the former, that is cleansing the scalp, should typically be happening every 7 to 10 days regardless. The latter, however, that is washing the hair shaft itself, really depends on how much product and or dirt accumulates on the hair and or how much product you wish to then reapply onto the hair. In reality, we typically don't separate the two, in that even if your hair itself isn't that dirty, we will typically just wash both our hair and scalp anyways because our scalp needs cleansing, or at least that should be the case anyway. Now, with this in mind, when we have braids installed, we typically aren't using that many heavy styling products on the hair itself, either before or during when we have the braids installed. And in addition to this, every single section of hair is now encased in a braid, which naturally keeps the hair much less exposed and or susceptible to the things that would otherwise make washing and conditioning the hair a priority, talk less of a need. This is why, and I say this very carefully, but this is why in this particular context, I wouldn't consider washing or cleansing the length of the hair and or braids a necessity, especially if they're only going to be installed for a period of about 6 weeks and you have no immediate plans to go rolling around in the dirt during that time period. The potential outcome of not cleaning your scalp for 6 weeks, however, may not be as forgiving. So this is why I choose to prioritize cleaning the scalp only when I have braids. Reason number 2 is that aside from being generally uncomfortable, it is a well-documented fact that keeping your scalp in a moist state for an extended period of time promotes both the colonization and adherence of bacteria and fungus on the scalp. Soaking an entire head of braids to wash them means that they will either have to be A, air dried, which besides the whole bacteria malarkey just takes forever. So you'll have to go about your day with a heavy head of long wet braids. Or your other option would be B, to blow dry them. Now, the issue with blow drying is that even if you manage to dry your hair completely without the use of heat, and that's a big if, because you and I both know how long it takes to blow dry hair on cool heat, even when it's not in braids. But let's humor the situation and say it's feasible. Research on blow drying hair suggests that your hair is likely going to have a lower moisture content, having been washed and blow dried, than it would have if it was just simply left alone. So, with all things considered, again, it made sense to me to just focus on getting the excess sebum as well as the excess dirt off the scalp. And on that note, Mr. Speaker, I rest my case. Now, really quickly before I sign off today, I figured it could be really helpful to give you guys a couple quick fire ways that you can use to help you determine when you personally need to cleanse your scalp. If and when you do have braids, a good baseline would be to aim to cleanse your scalp every 2 to 3 weeks during that time period. So say if you're keeping your braids in for an average of about 6 weeks, which is a good time to keep them in for, that would be about once or twice during that time period. However, we don't all produce sebum at the exact same rate. So that means that the one-size-fits-all approach may not necessarily be ideal for you. So here are a couple things that you might want to consider when trying to determine the frequency with which you should be cleansing your hair and or scalp more intuitively. The first telltale sign of excess sebum on your scalp is itchiness. Even more so if this itchiness is accompanied by pimples on your scalp or dandruff. Now, it is worth noting that it is possible to experience both itchiness as well as pimples on your scalp as a result of doing braids that isn't necessarily related to excess sebum buildup on your scalp. For example, if your braids are installed too tightly, then the tension placed on your follicles can result in feelings of itchiness as well as the appearance of pimples on your scalp. Now, the best way to know which one of the two you are experiencing is that the latter typically becomes evident very soon after braid installation, whereas itchiness and pimples that develop from excess sebum as well as dirt buildup on your scalp will typically develop gradually after some time has passed. Depending on your rate and or amount of sebum production, this can be anything from a week to a month. So you just want to pay enough attention to be able to note when this is happening, as it could very well be your scalp telling you that it needs to be cleaned. Now, say you are experiencing itchiness and suspect that you may have excess sebum buildup on your scalp. Well, here's a very simple and very quick test that you can do to gain a clearer picture on the situation. The first thing you're going to want to do is start with freshly washed and dried hands, and make sure not to apply any sort of cream to your hands thereafter. In this case, and in this case only, the ashier the better. Then simply take 2 fingers and press them firmly into an area in the top of your scalp for about 10 seconds and then remove them. You then want to rub your thumb against these fingers. If it feels like you've just put some lip balm on your fingertips, then it's definitely getting there. If the amount of buildup you get on your fingertips is enough to rub onto your other hand so that it no longer looks ashy, girl, it's a very good and necessary time to cleanse your scalp. Now, if you want to be bougie with it, then there is also the option of using oil blotting paper. With this option, what you want to do is press in with 1 or 2 fingers for about 30 to 40 seconds just to give the paper some time to absorb the sebum. If you do have excessive sebum buildup, what's going to happen is that upon removing the sheet from your scalp, you'll be able to see a notable translucent patch at the point where your fingers press the paper. As you can see is the case here with me, as it's been about 3.5 weeks since I installed these braids. Now, the good thing about gauging this way is that it can be both helpful whether you have braids or you don't have braids. In addition to this, it's also a very good way for you to be able to tell how successfully you have managed to clean your scalp using the method that we went through earlier in this video. So here's a side-by-side clip of my blotting paper sheets before and after cleansing my scalp. So if nothing else, at least we can say with a level of certainty that this method is an effective alternative to having soaking wet braids just to get the job done. That's all from me today. I really hope that you enjoyed this video and found it somewhat insightful. Again, please let me know if you want me to do a video on the kind of products that you can actually use to moisturize and condition your scalp, and I'll get right on that for you guys. Otherwise, as always, thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in my next video. Bye.